Microsoft is laying off 10,000 people. Stellaris is coming out with a new story pack update. Employees at Ubisoft are calling for a strike, and the rest of the gaming industry is laughing at the company because they're trying to be acquired. Then we talk about the battlechess-like MOBA called Noara and Forspoken's ridiculous PC requirements. Then we've got an update on the Activision Blizzard Netease fallout and China's response.
Nick here, and if we, a humble group of podcasters, can defeat our horrible audience surplus, then surely you can watch us and defeat your own boredom and play your favorable lie.
Hi, I'm Josh, and that's top shelf thinking.
My name is Andy, and this is Video Game Tango!
I was
gonna huzzah, but that works too.
Okay, well, huzzah!
Huzzah! Oh, I should have just said huzzah.
We're back!
Wahoo!
It's time to talk about things. Maybe some video games.
Who that was.
No. I want to talk about the
Bolsheviks.
Our political climate as it stands currently, yes. Quite, indeed. Hey, so guess what?
Chicken butts.
We're going to talk about a game all about political climate.
No, I want to talk about Microsoft and
Okay. Apolitical.
So, Microsoft has announced that it's going to have to lay off up to 10,000 employees.
They have that many beds?
I don't know if they lay them out. I know they lay them off. So, they announced this week that they're going to have to let go of 10,000 employees. Now,
if you haven't seen us on Twitch, it's worth it.
I think
there's video addendums. Highlight.
I think it's not necessarily a funny thing, but it in a non-traditional move from Microsoft. I feel like they're doing it in the most right of ways that layoffs can happen. These people are going to be losing their jobs. It's about 5%, roughly 5% of their workforce, of their total workforce. So I'm going to read directly from Game Rant here. CEO Satya Nadella discussed the layoffs as well as outlined what he feels Microsoft has to focus on to ensure that the company will be equipped to deal with the current and future recessions while maintaining growth. Between its gaming division, software developers, and operating systems, Microsoft continues to be a world-renowned brand that influences both gaming and the working world in a variety of ways. With over 220,000 employees worldwide, the announced layoffs are less than 5% of Microsoft's total workforce, but still cost the company $1.2 billion in severance expenses in 2023's second quarter. The CEO wrote that those costs include severance pay for qualifying U.S.-based employees, which would be higher than normal market value. 6 months of continued healthcare coverage, career transitional services, and 60 days prior termination notice, regardless of whether a state requires it or not. He also wrote that employees affected by the company layoffs outside the U.S. would receive benefits that align with their country's laws. So essentially, I think what they're doing is they're taking California law and applying that nationally and somewhat internationally. California having probably the strictest of the labor laws. In giving them 60-day termination notice. So they are still losing their jobs, but it comes with 2 months of warning. They're getting, severance pay and 6 months continued healthcare coverage. So, while it's not good news, obviously, if they're being honest in helping them trying to transition into other jobs, and giving them continued healthcare coverage and severance, I think most people could make that work, right? So
it is absolutely bewilderingly mind-boggling that they will make more money by spending $1.2 billion.
It's fucking crazy.
Laying off 10,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, because they wouldn't do that if they'd make more money if they kept them.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean,
they can afford $1,200 million in fucking layoffs.
It's weird. We're seeing Steve Ballmer pretend to be Dr. Evil here in this short. If you're watching live on Twitch or in the VOD on YouTube. But in all honesty, like kind of a good move from Microsoft. They're recognizing unions, allowing it to happen in their existing company, giving the green light for unionization in companies that they're looking at acquiring. It's just this is a very different Microsoft from like 1990s, early 2000s Microsoft, man. It's weird.
Yeah, they learn to follow the law.
I mean, not just
barely.
Not just the law, though. I mean, they are giving more than what the law requires. So at least there's that. It's not.
I just meant 90s Microsoft was much different.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Now they are still being sued everywhere. People trying to block this Activision Blizzard acquisition, but that's very Microsoft. That's 1990 Microsoft.
That's on brand.
That's on brand. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, 10,000 employees now. That is across all divisions. That's not just
from gaming,
from
etc. Software dev. Yeah.
Yeah. So
everyone who looks like they might unionize in the future.
Yeah. Right. Well,
we're just gonna give you this awesome payout, and it's called "fuck you" money.
Sir, you look a little hippy dippy.
You look a little like you want human rights.
Yeah, we don't do that here at Microsoft.
We'll recognize the union, but there won't be anyone to be in the union.
Proletariat says what?
Gotcha.
Hey, guess what? You got 2 months to get the fuck out.
Yeah, chat. Unions aren't always a bad thing. In fact, they are almost always a good thing.
Traditionally speaking, they're almost always a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless it's a police union.
Exactly why I said almost always. Well, I wish all those people luck. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you worked for Microsoft. That's pretty big on a resume. Yeah. No matter where you're coming from, you should be able to find work in a similar line of work.
I think it's just obviously, and these aren't all going to be from one place. It's not like 10,000 people in Seattle are being laid off, right? It's spread out across the world. Yeah. And like 10,000, God, yeah, it sounds like, man, that's a lot. But like when we were saying here, it's about 5% of their workforce. And that's still a pretty big number, but they're going to, obviously, like you're saying, they're going to make more profits doing this. So it does suck, but I mean, that's pretty fairly generous, I guess. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's still big business. We're still talking about big business here. So they're still working on acquiring Activision Blizzard. They're still working on acquiring new AI tech. They're still going to be hiring people for new departments, it's still Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
So as much as it sounds like we're making them out to be the good guy here, there are still, unfortunately, 10,000 people losing their jobs while money's being spent, here and there in search of profit.
They probably just did the age-old, so what do you say you do here? Shtick for 10,000 people. And they're like, okay.
I file the TPS reports. That's fake. TPS reports.
Oh.
Nick, you got news for us.
I do. So we had a little teaser for Stellaris a couple weeks ago, and there was this weird color-coded bar at the bottom. And people looked into it and realized it was like Morse code or something. And it teased this next story pack that they're releasing, the First Contact story pack. That's a mouthful. Largely decoded, the message that was hidden in there: contact is coming. Quote, for countless ages, your people have looked at the stars with wonder. Is there anyone else out there? When we meet, will they be friends or enemies? Will we be the ones to discover them, or are they already here hiding in plain sight? This content pack is going to focus on overhauling the pre-space age, quote-unquote, primitives in the game. So any of the alien races you can find that are anywhere from Stone Age to modern human age before they join the galactic community. And adding a whole bunch of new content regarding systems relating to awareness and diplomacy and espionage and learning insights from observing civilizations, as well as a few new origins marked as challenging, payback, and broken shackles revolving around the struggles of empires against the oppressive Myanmar specialized industry, while a third standard origin, Fear of the Dark, examines the fine line between paranoia and prudence. So heavily narrative-focused origins where you're going to start as primitives or heavily related to them. They're going to add in some new low technology civics. There's been some mods that have done this before, starting like start the game 100 years before the actual start time, and you have to get all the text and whatnot to get to space age. But it's nice to see it done first party without jank. Apparently, also, no one really caught on to this, but they're going to be cloaking tech added with this update.
That's neat.
I don't know exactly how that's going to work, but that's going to be a huge shakeup to how combat works if you don't have full proper knowledge of where your enemies are.
Yeah, that's
very exciting.
That's a neat spin on the game, and
I think it's a good mix because, you get these narrative-driven origins. They're really fun to play through the one time. And then you're like, okay, I've experienced that very particular narrative origin. So by adding in a default mechanic, something related to cloaking, I think that's a really good idea. So next Thursday, they're just going to discuss the vision and themes of this story pack in greater detail. And I'm sure probably next handful of months, we will see the drop of the pack itself. So very exciting. The Mod Jam also just got done, the Stellaris Mod Jam. They do one every year. And this one, they had mod authors give them a couple weeks to make up new endgame crises. So there's a whole bunch of mods where if you want to play with different endgame crises in the standard 3, also available for free.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah. So last week, we talked about Ubisoft having a rough go of things, and we talked about that email that got sent out. Well, some people took some issue, took umbrage with that email. Solidaris Informique, a union in France, in Ubisoft's Paris' division, has called for a strike after Guillemot, I'm butchering that poor Frenchman's name, with his dismissive comments, also calls for better pay in the company, and in particular, a 10% pay raise to account for the inflation crisis and the implementation of a 4-day work week. So I'm going to go ahead and read their statement in full here. They're calling for a strike Friday, January 27th afternoon. According to Guillemot, the ball is in our court, but the money stays in his pocket. In his latest statement, Mr. Guillemot announces a worrying future for Ubisoft. If their request to employees to be especially careful and strategic with your spending is ironic, considering the company's editorial strategy of the last few years, it is not funny. When Mr. Guillemot speaks of attrition and organizational adjustments, it means staff reductions, discrete studio disclosures, salary cuts, disguised layoffs. On several occasions, Mr. Guillemot is trying to shift the blame once again onto employees. He expects us to be mobilized, to give it our all, to be as efficient and lean as possible. These words mean something over time: managerial pressure, burnout. Mr. Guillemot asks a lot from the employees, but without any compensation. Have salaries kept up with high inflation of recent years? What about the 4-day work week? So here are their demands: an immediate 10% increase for all salaries, regardless of annual increases to compensate for inflation. With the hundreds of millions of euros obtained from Tencent, there is money in the coffers for the employers. If the improvement of working conditions, with in particular the implementation, of the 4-day work week, transparency on the evolution of the workforce, both locally and globally, a strong commitment against disguised dismissals and condemnation of abusive managerial policies that push employees to resign. And because of Mr. Guillemot and his clique only understand the relationship of power, Solidaris Informatique is calling on the employees of Ubisoft Paris to strike Friday afternoon from 2 until 6 p.m. I, for one, stand in solidarity with these guys. So hopefully they will add some pressure to Ubisoft here and make them make some better choices.
Ubisoft has just kind of been shitting the bed left and right for a few years now.
They're floundering a little bit. We talked in depth kind of about like why we think that they've been floundering and why we think they've started to see a kind of failure as a company. And yeah, they still employ thousands of people. And you know, you do have to remember that thousands of people work for them and you have to humanize that, right? So while Ubisoft, the conglomerate that it is, has been floundering, you still have a workforce of people that really dedicate their lives to making these games happen. It's not their fault that they're put into massive amounts of crunch and required to put out the same stale experience year after year.
It's never the bottom employees that are the problem, you know?
Yeah.
I really see Ubisoft getting bought in the next decade.
Well, I'd like to talk about that.
As it turns out.
I did not mean to do that.
Ubisoft reportedly got laughed at while trying to propose mergers and acquisitions.
Oh.
So,
I mean, we were kind of talking about that last week too, right? Like,
yeah. So this article comes from Kit Guru. In recent years, we've seen a renewed focus by major gaming companies to merge with or acquire smaller developers and publishers. Ubisoft has supposedly been proposing a number of potential acquisitions and mergers with various parties. However, they reportedly mostly got laughed at. Ubisoft definitely already did the rounds proposing acquisitions and mergers with other similar companies, and it mostly got laughed at. It's just too unwieldy. Its strength was its distributed development structure, and now that is an albatross. So this is something that we talked about previously. Yeah. Too many acquisitions, too many titles, not enough focus on making new content, and they were not building from bottom up.
Yeah.
They got success, and they just started building that platform wider. The structure wasn't there to continue making these massive games, and now, the expectations are that we're still going to get Far Cry 7, that we're still going to get, we're going to get these games that people are buying routinely, right? They're still seeing sales. They're not as high as they used to be, but it's still expected by its players.
House of Deluxe Edition cards.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And yeah, at this point, it looks like nobody is willing to acquire Ubisoft. So it's funny that you bring it up, that acquisition may be in their future, but maybe only after they fail.
I mean, knowing that, I addend the statement that it's more likely they're going to have to start selling off their IP rights, the publishing rights to certain.
Well, they have been, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if no one's going to buy them out, they need to make money. So
if your structure
rights to
if your structure's so bad that another company is like, that might just tear us fucking down if we bring that on. No.
We like earning money, not losing it.
Yeah. When you can say, hey man, we make Far Cry, we make all these great games. We make all the Tom Clancy games, and people say like, no thanks. Yeah. You've been doing something wrong for a little while.
You do you, bro.
Yeah, that's... Man, look at us being kind of ahead of the game, though.
Boy.
I mean, we were talking about this last week. I like that.
Yeah.
Now it's being laughed out of the room, huh?
Yeah. We even talked about the potential lack of acquisition last week. I mean, boom! Look at us go.
Perfect.
Reporting the news before it happens. Motherfuckers, that's what we do here. Well, Nick, I got a game.
It's not Blackwake or Holdfast, the two games that guys have been saying for weeks you want to play now.
Yeah, I do want to play those.
Yeah, we should probably get around to playing those. But no, I was just poking around, and I found something I felt was kind of worth talking about. There is a small company by the name of Atypique. It's a French company, 7 employees, that has been working on what is seemingly their first and only game. It was released quite a while ago, and then went free to play, I think, November of 2021. And they've been slowly chugging away at it, adding updates. And the reviews, if you read the majority of them, they say the game is fantastic when I can play it, because the user base is so low that it's hard to find games. So I figure this game was kind of up my alley. I still need to play it to figure out exactly what it's all about. But if all it needs is players to be good, maybe there's something here. So this is Noara, The Conspiracy, a game actually based off a book the head of the company wrote. And it's described as a new subgenre of MOBAs called MOCAs, Multiplayer Online Chess Arena. It's kind of a mixture of an RTS and a card game and teamfight tactics and chess. And that you have the MOBA-style arena, multiple characters fighting for some kind of goal. But you have an offensive turn and a defensive turn, and your pieces act like chess pieces. They have certain ways they can move, certain ways they can attack. But when your opponent is going, you have the ability to somehow react. You can dodge or defend or deflect and do various things while they're attacking. So it's not just watching your guys get hit on their turn, then you attack them on their turn. I had about 20 minutes before the cast to watch some of it. I think I kind of wrapped my head around it, but without playing it, I don't know exactly how it works. But it is a pretty novel concept, kind of half RTS, half turn-based teamfight tactics style game, which teamfight tactics in that whole genre, I wanted to like it. It wasn't really my jam, but I know that a few of us, Andrew and Russ, really, really liked it. And it seems like they're doing something interesting here. And I'm a huge fan of MOBAs. So it is free to play. It doesn't hurt trying it out. I have no idea how their online store works, other than they said that their freemium content is all cosmetics, which is always a good sign. I could be wrong. But yeah, it looks pretty neat. And I'm hoping that if it is good, they will start doing some marketing.
And also, I mean, based on the video that we're watching here in the live stream, it seems like there's a couple ways to win, and one is almost like a PvE focus, where like you hunt for treasure, and the other one is you engage in PvP.
Yeah, it seems like their main game mode, you have these treasure chests that drop down, and if you open all the chests, you win, or you can kill the enemy. But opening the chests it takes like real life time while your opponent has an opportunity to act. But it looks like there was some interesting counterplays. If you can predict what your opponent's going to do, you can essentially pre-fire or like pre-dodge. And they found an interesting mechanic where, because if you have a enemy turn, player turn, pieces can't go at the same time. And this they can. So if you were to say move to a square that your opponent is also moving to, there's a kind of Magic the Gathering stack logic where you push them out of the way, or they dodge, or you can collide multiple enemies into one another, like in a cascading effect. And I thought that'd be pretty neat to try out.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I mean, it's a set of different mechanics on an already established genre.
Yeah,
and I like to see that. I mean, if we can see a little bit of nuance come to the MOBA or the battle chess style games, it does. Yeah.
I really am I could rant about this for hours. I'm a firm opinion that the core gameplay of a MOBA with a duo lane and a solo lane and a mid is just inherently broken.
Yeah.
And so to do something different, but in the same vein, I love system exploration and discovery. I've never been a system mastery person myself, so I don't know if I'll be playing this forever. But if it's good, I'd like to really explore this mechanics they've got going on with simultaneous turns. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think I might also check it out. The reason personally speaking, I don't care for MOBAs. Yeah. And I've played them. I've played most of them, especially since most of them come out free to play. So I've given most of them a chance just to see, like, hey, is this a thing that really lights my fire? I've played plenty of Dota. I've played plenty of League. I've played a little bit of Smite, and the MOBAs that we've come to know and love. But it didn't take me long to realize that gameplay loop wasn't really for me. I loved it. I loved Dota, playing Dota maps, modded maps for Warcraft 3. And by the time we had League of Legends coming out in Dota 2, and these ultra formulated, 3-lane mechanic MOBAs, I was already kind of over it. So while I found them fun in the beginning, it's not a gameplay loop that lasted for me. So to see some nuance in there and something that might take, while MOBAs take skill and knowledge, it feels like this is a little bit different paced, and it isn't going to be like as spammy as MOBAs can be. So I like that idea.
It's not the first to attempt to do a simultaneous turn-based MOBA. That would be Atlas Reactor, which I did get to play a bit of before they shut down in 2019. But that game was more so that you choose your actions in advance and then they all play out at the same time.
Yeah.
So predicting what your opponent was going to do was very, very important. And it was very, very unique, and I loved it. But of course, it was super niche, so it lasted all of 4 years.
Yeah.
Which is probably where this one's going to head.
I mean, in all likelihood, hopefully what they can do, I know it's a small team.
Yeah.
You said of 7. Mm-hmm. They just need to get this into the hands of a big streamer. At the end of the day,
they just need to do some marketing.
Yeah, that's what it requires, and that is not cheap.
No, it's not. It's an unfortunate also oversight that a lot of the small indie devs have, that they don't budget for marketing.
Yeah,
you can have the best game in the world, but if no one knows to play it, some of the Steam reviews are like, "I love this game, but I literally was digging through my recommended games Steam for hundreds of pages before I came across it. This game has been out for since November of 2021. How am I just hearing about this now? So
maybe hopefully that means that the marketing department has gotten its stuff together. But yeah, it's interesting. your budget doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be the traditional media package anymore. You just get in the hands of a few prominent streamers. Now, that is not inexpensive. Like, if you give it to Shroud, you are going to be paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in order for the biggest streamers on the platform to play it. Sure, you don't. Yeah. Get some mid-sized streamers, people that stream to 2,000-3,000 people, and a coupon code for 50% off of your game. You will get that. I mean, obviously, this is free to play, so it doesn't really apply. But if they have an in-game currency for tokens for purchases, we don't know yet. Something like that.
That's true.
And then if your game is good,
then a big streamer will pick up on it.
Exactly.
The craziest games blow up on Twitch, just like any viral thing.
Well, I mean, Apex Legends. Apex Legends was out already and didn't really bring anything new to the genre. We already had battle royales. Now, it was tight. It felt a bit like Titanfall. The gameplay loop is traditional battle royale, but it's it brings its own flavor. Sure. I'm not saying it's not completely recycled, but Fortnite was out. We already had PUBG. We already had Warzone came out in the same year. So it's not like we didn't already have massive battle royales. But what Apex Legends did to make it kind of the king was put it in the hands of Twitch streamers. And they had a budget. It was a big ass budget. It's EA money, right? It's Respawn money. So it was in the millions of dollars of budget, but they put it in the hands of streamers. They paid them to play for a few hours, and that game blew the fuck up. Yeah. So all it takes is choosing the right platform, a few grand, and I think they could have that audience that they're looking for. So just my opinion.
I will give this a shot before our next podcast and get a review on it if I can hopefully get into a game.
Yeah, right.
They have responded to some of the comments saying people can't do games, saying we just went free to play literally like very, 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 very recently. Might have been within like this week. So give it some time. They have a Discord that you can go to try to form game teams and whatnot.
Cool.
Yeah.
And free to play is probably the play.
Yeah. And the system requirements, I was looking at them, are really not that bad. They're recommended 8 gigs, GTX 1080, Intel i5. That's pretty kind of medium range. Yeah. You get away with 4 gigs of RAM, a Core 2 Duo, GTX 760. So,
well, you know what you can't get away with those specs.
Just lead us.
You sure did.
You sure did.
I'm on accident.
You are
fire,
on it, dude. You are on it. Okay. So last month, we learned that Returnal, really cool looking game. Kind of iffy on the name there, but whatever.
Sounds like an anal surgery.
That's Retainal. That's a totally different thing.
Yep. So it released for PS5 in April of 2021 and is coming out on PC in 2023, with the recommended specs asking for a knee-buckling 32 gigabytes of RAM.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Like, now 32? that is just the recommended amount. The minimum is still a hefty, big old boy of 16 gigs, just to get, I think like 720 and 30 FPS.
Yeah.
Now, no, that is a port, right? So it is a port of a. So you can say, well, it's not like optimized for PC. Well,
sure.
So right. So you could make that argument.
No. and I'll tell you why after you're done.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Now, Forspoken is getting a simultaneous release or near simultaneous release with the PS5 and the PC. Now, for its minimum required specs here, I'm just going to skip right. You're going to need a Ryzen 51600 or 3.
No, you'll need a Ryzen 5 1600.
1600. Oh, there we go. An Intel Core i7 3070.
3770.
Jeez.
You want me to go over these specs real quick?
Yeah, you just you hit them up because I'm having trouble.
So for minimum specs, you'll need an AMD Ryzen 5 1600 or Intel Core i7 3770, both at 3.6 gigahertz or 3.7 gigahertz or better, rather. You'll need a minimum graphics card of an RX 5500 XT, 8 gigabytes of VRAM, or the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060, 6 gigabytes of VRAM. You'll need at least 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that is for a display resolution of 720p at 30 frames per second. They do in the minimum resolutions, they do say that you can use a standard hard drive. That goes away in the next set. Recommended is going to require an SSD. It also requires a Ryzen 5 3600 at 3.7 gigahertz or an Intel Core i7 8700K at 3.7 gigahertz or better. It also requires an AMD Radeon RX 6700 XT at 12 gigabytes of VRAM or an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 at 8 gigabytes of VRAM. That is, and 24 gigabytes of RAM, mind you. That is for a display resolution of 1440p at 30 FPS.
Wow. Yeah, it's bad.
For Ultra, this is a fun one.
Could just sacrifice your father
and your mother. So AMD Ryzen 5 5800X or an Intel Core i7 12700K. An AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT 16 gigabyte version or an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4080 16 gigabyte version. You'll also need 32 gigabytes of RAM, and that is for 4K at 60 FPS. You will also need an NVMe SSD of 150 gigabytes or greater. So they throw out
gigabyte SSD just for one game.
And you need an NVMe SSD. So you need the fastest of the storage.
That's fucking ridiculous.
This is Returnal or Cool Boots?
This is Cool Boots. This is Forspoken.
This is Forspoken.
Okay, Forspoken.
Yeah. So now, okay, let's go back to I will tell you why.
So, well, I mean, just to like put it right next to it, Modern Warfare 2 2022 asks for 16 gigabytes of RAM to run at 4K.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay, lay it on me. Why?
Because of bad optimization. So in the system requirements here,
16 gigs of RAM.
Yeah. So in the system requirements here, the minimum spec system is already more powerful than the PS5. So the Radeon RX 5500 XT, and I don't have the information in front of me anymore, runs at more flops, faster cycles per second than the integrated GPU, or otherwise known as APU, in the PS5. AMD Ryzen 5 1600, it doesn't quite have the processing power of the PS5's AM4 processor. But these are all AM4 platform processors that they're recommending from the get-go.
So it's not too far off.
It's not too far off. So here's the thing. As far as optimization goes for the PlayStation 5, they are already using the AM4 and the Vega platform that AMD created. Most of these graphics cards here are post Vega. They are superior. They are the Navi edition of their graphics chipset.
Okay.
They're also using AM4. Now there's Intel variants sprinkled here as well, but those should be they're sharing equivalent workload processors here. So what they're sharing here between AMD and Intel, those are essentially they're just Intel equivalents, which would make sense for the PC. So the fact of the matter is, it seems like Forspoken, for some reason, is being really poorly optimized for PC and really, really well optimized for its console companions. Because you are essentially using off-the-shelf tech to make the PS5. Now, their NVMe SSD is kind of the killer thing of the PS5. It does run faster than modern Gen 4 NVMe SSDs for PC, but only slightly. Gen 5 SSDs are out, NVMe specifically. They run on PCI Express, and they are faster than the PlayStation 5's storage. So the PlayStation 5 really doesn't do much to compete with its PC counterpart here. It's using nearly off-the-shelf tech. It's a little bit specialized because AMD they mashed a CPU and a GPU together, right?
Yeah.
But that's not uncommon. They already do that, even in partnership with Intel.
So something like that makes sense for me for like Returnal, right? Because it's being ported over, so they're just like, okay, well, but this is being developed right alongside for the PC. So why I just don't.
Well, in all honesty, it's probably laziness. They're probably building it for PS5 because that's where they're going to get the majority of sales. and then they're porting it for PC.
So one thing is that this is being developed by Luminous Productions, a renaming Business Division 2, a subsidiary of Square Enix, whose previous only game that I can see is Final Fantasy 15. So it's a Sony division working on the Sony PlayStation, who's made one game that was all about graphics and next to nothing else.
Okay.
This division, Luminous Production, was made, quote unquote, to create a new AAA video game studio for a global audience using Square Enix's proprietary Luminous engine. So combine the fact that they've only made one game, that game was balls of the wall graphics, and it was PS5, tells me that maybe combined with lackadaisical effort on optimization, maybe they just don't have good veterancy and experience optimizing shit for PC.
Yes, so that is a good point. I had not read that. That's a good point. So Final Fantasy 15, let's talk about that when it came to PC. Final Fantasy 15 had a huge in-engine bug that caused it to run at less than a quarter of the frames per second that it should have been. And that persisted for nearly a year after its release. Gamers Nexus reported on that months before it was taken care of by Business 2 from Square Enix. And still, it took them months to implement a fix.
Wow.
That happened because there was a specific NPC type that had difficult hair to render. And what they didn't understand is that that texture continued to render no matter how far away you were from the model at all times. And these things were herd animals that were in the background while you were doing your driving thing in Final Fantasy 15. So that actually tells me a lot. That tells me a whole story, in that it does seem like it's like they put it in the wrong hands for its port, especially since Sony in particular did such an excellent job in its port of God of War.
Yeah, I was gonna say God of War runs like it ran beautifully on my old rig.
Yeah,
like
with a GTX 1070, 16 gigs of RAM, and a Core i5.
Yeah, like it.
4th gen Core i5. So let's talk about that for a minute. We talked about God of War for the PC and what its specs were, and at the time we thought that was going to
be hefty.
It was a bit hefty, especially considering that it was a PS4 title. What we didn't factor in was that it was going to have such good optimization that you were going to be able to play that game on anything. It's wild. That game plays perfectly at 60 frames per second on like medium settings on the Steam Deck.
The Steam Pad.
Steam Deck. So, maybe Sony should take a lesson here, and whoever did the port for God of War should be doing all of their ports, especially considering that that Sony's committed to putting more of their games on the on the PC. So I don't know.
Definitely.
I understand this is Square Enix, right? So really, Square Enix is the one you got to point at. But like, maybe Sony should should point them in the direction of somebody that can do a proper port.
The settings for the much anticipated Last of Us coming to PC in March are very reasonable. They're reasonable settings.
Yeah, that's fair. But that is a PS3 game.
Well, isn't PS4?
It came out originally on PlayStation 3. There was a remaster on PS3 later on. Then there was a remaster on PS4, and there is soon to be a remaster for PS5. So there will also be the PC release coming soon.
So which remaster are we getting?
We are getting the PS5 remaster, as far as I know.
Okay, cool. So it's bells and whistles.
Yeah. So I mean, but it is an engine that they've kind of perfected at this point. Like, these guys know how to do upscaling and ports.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I want to give them all the credit for this. The Luminous engine, when it came out, was amazing, and I was reading about what it can do.
Sure.
Very cool. It came out in 2012.
Yeah.
You've had over a decade now to master your system and update it and whatnot, and hopefully. It's kind of a lose-lose. Either the bad port optimization is due to the engine or it's due to incompetency, right, on somebody's part.
You can only blame the engine so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Not only that, but Square Enix has been making good use of Unreal. So, maybe you should have just made these games in Unreal, committed to Unreal Engine 5 when everybody else did, including other parts of your own company. I don't know. So yeah, Josh, that was you. I got a thing.
You got a thing?
Ooh, thing.
Speaking of Activision Blizzard. I'm just kidding. But speaking of Activision Blizzard.
Oh, the sub double bluff. He got us.
Mm-hmm.
World of Warcraft is over in China.
Oh, yeah, I did see that.
So Netease pushed for an extension from Activision Blizzard to allow them more time to come to a conclusion that would allow them to continue distributing as the publisher of World of Warcraft in China. Activision Blizzard denied them their extension. Now, it's interesting, especially considering that NetEase is essentially a company that has gotten big on World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
So World of Warcraft was a very early publication for the Chinese distributor that we know as NetEase. Since then, they've become a major game developer.
Yeah.
But World of Warcraft has been their bread and butter for quite some time. It's what has allowed them to grow into the company that they are now.
So much that every one of their 9 million games they've made are all basically World of Warcraft.
Right. Yes. Now, they've really gotten the shaft, and so have the Chinese players. So obviously, Chinese players are no longer going to be able to play World of Warcraft, and that happens this week. It's done this week. Activision Blizzard said that they were going to give NetEase the tools that allowed players to download their characters locally to their own machine in the event that they were ever going to strike a deal either with NetEase or even in the chance that they made a deal with another company. That they would introduce a tool that allowed people to download their characters locally to their machine so they could bring them back when World of Warcraft, comes back to China. In the event that it does, right? This is all
cheating.
Well, it would be if the tool worked.
Oh.
So Activision Blizzard gave NetEase the tool. NetEase implemented the code to allow players to do that. It was essentially a button at login that said, hey, download your players because we only have a few days left. Or download your characters, rather, because we only have a few days left. Nobody's been able to get that to work. Nobody's been able to download their characters. And that is code straight from Activision Blizzard. NetEase had no part in it. They were just given the tools that allowed them to do so. So
we got your money. We're running.
Yeah, that's essentially what it's feeling like. NetEase, they are huge fans of Activision Blizzard. They've been playing World of Warcraft. Like the dev team plays World of Warcraft. There's a reason that it took off the way it did in China, and it's because they were actively expressing their love and enjoyment for World of Warcraft. So here I've got a little bit of a video for you. It's a short one, and it takes a little bit of explanation, but there's a part that's totally understandable. Hey, look, that's a giant statue of Gorehowl in the yard of NetEase that the developers are starting to tear down with hammers.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Sign.
it's really sad that it's going away. Now you'll see a couple times here for some reason they're showing pictures of what looks like maybe green tea. That is exactly what that is. Green tea in Chinese culture is apparently supposed to be a hoe. It represents a very stately, proper woman in the streets and a hoe in the sheets. That's why they can continue to show cups of green tea being distributed to employees, is because they're essentially calling Activision a slut.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. And that it's really rough to translate all of the thought that goes into that into English. But yeah, that is essentially what it is somebody that tricked you. Right.
Well, another death in the giant capitalistic gaming market.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks for all the players in that market that, have spent the money and the time and, have characters that they love that they're now going to lose.
Yeah.
Roughly 3 million people.
Yeah.
It's an extra layer of shit that they were like, hey, we're going to give you a thing that you can save them. And then it just doesn't work. Like, why do that if it's not going to fucking work? Like, why do that? That makes no sense. But I mean, this is, I feel like this is clearly, for the benefit of acquisition, of Activision being acquisitioned.
Possibly.
Well, I mean, it's a little It is. I mean, I guess we're going to talk about geopolitics after all.
Well, yeah, you had that studio head.
Yeah, it's
Netease that said this is all the works of one jerk, and they never specified who that was and whether it was from Activision Blizzard or from Microsoft's camp.
I mean, there's a lot of worry with the Chinese government infiltrating things like TikTok, things like that, right? Like there was that whole scare and everything. So yeah, it'd probably just be easier to let this contract lapse, and then if the acquisition goes through, we'll just restart it back up.
Well, and
no harm, no foul, yada yada. But it's like
that. Honestly, that's why I think it's Phil Spencer that he's talking about. That one jerk. I think Phil Spencer may be at least the target of that comment, because I don't see a world in which Bobby Kotick says no, I don't like more money.
Yeah.
Right. Because they've already been doing the dealings with NetEase. I don't think it would be that big of an issue for Activision Blizzard to continue renewing that, especially after Blitzchung and all of that stuff. Like they cow down to the state. They cow down to the United States government as long as they don't interfere with them making more money. So it's one of those things where As far as a business decision, it's a weird one considering that they make a lot of money through NetEase in China. So it has to be something to do with this acquisition. And yeah, my theory is that comment is targeting Phil Spencer because of the acquisition.
Well, an RIP to all 3 million of you Chinese Horde and Alliance players.
Zug zug.
Zug zug.